Welcome to the 2023 Fantasy Baseball Preview for, unfortunately, my hometown Detroit Tigers. I am Dave Eddy. I'm here with my dude, Connor Thomure. We're going to get into some fantastic Detroit Tigers baseball here in a second. Before we do, I need you to do me a quick little favor. Drop a like on this video. I'm guessing if you were watching this one, you've watched all the others. We're doing a video for each team and rolling out one at a time here. So drop a like. Let us know you've been enjoying that. Do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications so that you do get an alert every time one of these videos come out so you can get it while it's hot and fresh off the press. Connor, you ready to hop into things?
Let's get into it.
All right, buddy. Let's go ahead and start off with the starting lineup. And this is coming from Roster Resource. So this is, what they have, projected. So we'll kind of go with the flow here a little bit. We got Austin Meadows at the top, followed by Javier Baez, Riley Greene, Jonathan Scope, Kerry Carpenter, Eric Haas, Nick Maitan, my boy Spencer Torkelson, and Akil Baddoo. I want to ask you first about Austin Meadows. So he's a guy that I think is kind of in that Joey Gallo camp of, I think the shift is really going to help him a lot. We didn't see much of any of him really in last season. He had so many different injuries that came up. We really didn't see anything from him at all. But what are you thinking, we're going to see from Austin Meadows 2023?
I think we'll definitely see a bit of a comeback. It'll be nice just to see him on the field, to be honest. He's a good player that'll definitely help out this Tigers team, help out a player like Javier Baez, and help out the young players like Riley Greene and Torkelson. But from a fantasy perspective, I'm concerned about him because, he had more than just physical injuries. He came out and said he was dealing with some mental health stuff. And you really just don't know how a guy is going to come back the next year, unless I missed something saying he's 100% ready to go. I'm still concerned that he might be dealing with stuff behind the scenes that might, linger over and affect his playing time and how well he plays. So from a fantasy perspective, I am avoiding him this year, but hopefully we do see some kind of comeback from him.
Yeah, speaking of a guy who we need to see a comeback from, Javier Baez, man. Coming over from Chicago, a guy that, I didn't follow super closely, but obviously, with his personality and stuff, he's kind of, a superstar in the game. I knew he had long slumps, that would eventually turn into like ridiculous heaters. But last year, pretty much all we saw were these incredible cold streaks with extraordinarily short hot streaks. So my question for you is, do you think that we're going to see, more of the old Javi this year, or is maybe the 2022 version more to be expected moving forward?
I'm taking a risk on us seeing the old Javi. I can't say for certain how it's going to be, but I'm taking the risk on him. Might as well. I think this is the cheapest we'll ever get to draft him, and for a player with his potential, I think you got to take the risk on him. And last year it got to a point where, he had the cold stretch throughout, a long stretch there, the cold stretch, and you're waiting for him to get hot.
All of summer.
Exactly. Waiting for him to get hot, waiting for him to get hot, and then nothing. So you ended up dropping him. I think you're going to get him for super cheap this year. So I'm going for him. And worst comes to worst, he fills out your middle infield spot.
Yeah, for sure.
Or you drop him.
Last thing I want to talk about is just about the two young guys here, Riley Greene, Spencer Torkelson. I mean, I'm still a Torkelson guy, and maybe that has to do with, me being more of a dynasty than a redraft guy. So, I'm obviously not super into him necessarily for 2023. I do think he's a good buy low guy, but I don't see him being your starting first baseman in a normal sized league and you being comfortable with that. How do you feel between the two of them? Like, given the choice, would you like strongly lean towards Riley Greene, or maybe you just don't like them both, or what are your thoughts on the two of them?
I'm definitely fine with taking Riley Greene. I think he can provide some stuff. Torkelson, I don't know. There was so many big expectations for him last year, and his roster percentage was super high, skyrocketed. Then he just didn't put it together, and it took a while for that roster percentage to drop. And I think a lot of people are still on board the Torkelson train. Just waiting for him to do something. And I think it's kind of going to be the same way this year. I think a lot of people are going to just be rostering him on their bench, waiting for him to, break out, hit a 2 home run game, something like that. What's your take on where he's batting in the lineup? 8 seems kind of low for a player of what his caliber can be. What do you think?
Now with the production we saw from him, I mean, in a perfect world, he'd probably be batting, fourth or fifth. But with, I mean, I don't mind the way that this lineup is put together. Honestly, I don't know about Meadows leading off necessarily, but I think it makes sense. I mean, in a perfect world, he's going to just move his way up that order, but he's got to earn that right. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
All right, buddy. Let's hop into the starting rotation. And again, I don't know if I'm just a homer or not, but I don't mind this rotation. Up at the top, we got Eduardo Rodriguez, who had a really odd absence in the middle towards the end of the season there. That concerns me with him coming back. We bring Matthew Boyd back, who once was our ace, wasn't much anywhere else, was injured, comes back, and he's our 2 guy. That kind of concerns me. We just signed Michael Lorenzen. We got Matt Manning and Spencer Turnbull's coming back. When I see this rotation, I don't mind it. It's just there's obviously not an ace here. There's more, a lot of number 3 kind of starters. So, I mean, with that in mind, who, if anyone, do you trust the most here? And then kind of put them in order for me.
Well, you would like to be able to trust, the guys not mentioned here, Tariq Skubal or Casey Mize.
Yeah,
fortunately, they're not.
Them.
So excluding them, I'm picking Eduardo Rodriguez, the number 1 guy up there. I think if we don't include the time missed last year, he had an okay season. Wasn't his best by any means, but it was okay. It was rosterable in fantasy baseball in like 12-team or 14-team leagues. And then if you coming into this year, if he's able to put together a whole year and not have that weird missed time, he had family matters going on. If I think he puts together a whole season, he might reach 200 innings again, like he did a few years ago with the Red Sox. Moving on, I think Matt Manning is the second guy, and I say it like that because it's a bit iffy because you really don't know with these guys. Like they're not terrible, but at the same time they're not the greatest. But Matt Manning does have that
a lot of time too last year.
He does, but he does have that prospect pedigree where he could really make an impact and be the number 2, number 3 guy in the rotation. And then behind them, I think it's Spencer Turnbull. I like him a lot. I've liked him for a while. He's not outstanding, but he gets the job done. And then behind them, I'd say Matthew Boyd, then Michael Lorenzen to finish that off.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too far off. I might go Rodriguez 1, Turnbull 2, Manning 3, just because we've seen more of Turnbull than we've seen of Manning. We just didn't see him last year.
Yep.
And then, I think I go Boyd, and then I think Lorenzen's the last guy in my list. I don't necessarily agree with the way that Roster Resource has this laid out, but I guess we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and finish up with their bullpen here. We got Alex Lang in the closing spot. I think he's pretty clearly defined in that role, at least to start the season. I think he's got, some rope there. Jason Foley and Jose Cisnero are your 8th and 7th and 8th inning guys. Will Vest, Tyler Alexander, Ronnie Garcia, Garrett Hill, and Mason Englert kind of round that out. I'm not a huge fan with the fact that guys like Tyler Alexander, Ronnie Garcia, Garrett Hill, those middle relievers, those are failed starters. So they're not really relievers, they're failed starters. And so that kind of concerns me. They've got just, a lot of guys that probably shouldn't be in the bullpen, but that's where we are. So, I mean, last year they honestly had one of the best bullpens in the league. That was the only reason why they weren't more miserable. But there's a lot of new faces in there this year. Like I said, I think Lang is the unquestioned closer. But, I mean, how much do you trust him kind of between, just the uncertainty of him personally and then, the number of opportunities that he's likely to see on this team?
I mean, I trust them more than I trust any of the other guys here. So I'm fine with having him as in my fantasy team. Gregory Soto was rosterable. I had him in a 14-team league last year for quite some time before moving on from him. I think, Lang could be the same way where, he goes in there, maybe gets a couple saves a week and puts up a few innings, gets some strikeouts. But, I mean, yeah, not spectacular, but He's a good guy to close your fantasy bullpen out, where if you need like one more closer to get a handful of saves, then he could be a guy that you target.
All right, well, that's going to do it here for our Detroit Tigers preview. If you haven't heard yet, we do have our all access membership now available. Head on over to fantasy6pack.net/plans. You can sign up there. You have direct access to guys like Connor and myself to talk any kind of baseball you want to. We can talk best ball, dynasty, redraft, DFS, you name it. You've got guys like us in there, that you have full access to. So make sure you give that a look. I appreciate you all tuning in, and we'll see you for the next video.